You wake up on a normal weekday morning, nothing dramatic, no emergency, no panic. You grab your phone before you even get out of bed, not because you're worried, just to check. Your paycheck hit a few days ago, so the number looks fine. Not great, not terrible, just fine. And that feeling? That's where people get stuck. On the way to work, you grab coffee. Not fancy, just your usual. Lunch happens the same way. Something quick, something easy, something you don't have to think about. Later that night, you scroll for a bit. Maybe you order something small. Maybe you keep a subscription you meant to cancel. Maybe you pay for convenience without ever calling it a decision. None of this feels irresponsible. None of it feels like bad money behavior. And yet, every year that passes, buying a house feels further away. Not because you're bad with money, not because you don't earn enough, but because something quiet is draining your momentum. Here's the thing. Most people don't feel broke because they're actually broke. They feel broke because their money never gets a chance to build pressure. And today, we're talking about the $300 habit that quietly stops that pressure from ever forming. And how that habit might be the real reason home ownership feels impossible. My name is Nick, and I spend way too much time thinking about why people who earn decent money still feel stuck. And if you're someone who feels like you're doing okay but never actually moving forward, hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up, because this one is going to hit close to home. Now look. When people hear $300 habit, they immediately assume this is about coffee or takeout or some tired money lecture. That's not what this is. This isn't about what you're buying. It's about how you're spending. And what that spending trains your brain to believe about money, because $300 a month doesn't feel dangerous. Especially if you're earning $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year. You tell yourself, it's not that much. I deserve it. I'll save later. I'm doing fine. Individually, those thoughts make sense. Together, they quietly wreck your future. Here's what most people don't realize. Money almost never disappears in big dramatic moments. It disappears in boring ones, and boring losses are the hardest to notice because they never trigger fear. They just delay progress. Let's slow this down and actually do the math. $300 a month is $3,600 a year. 5 years, $18,000. 10 years, $36,000. And that's assuming the number never grows. No, which it almost always does. As your income increases, your baseline spending increases with it. The $300 habit quietly turns into $400, then $600. Then, suddenly you're spending close to $1,000 a month without ever calling it lifestyle inflation. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average American household spends over $8,000 a year on food away from home. That's not celebrations, that's not luxury, that's convenience. And convenience is the most expensive thing nobody budgets for. Now you might be thinking, okay Nick, but $300 a month isn't what's stopping me from buying a house. On the surface, that sounds reasonable, but this is where it gets interesting. The problem isn't the $300. The problem is what the $300 prevents. Buying a home isn't about the monthly payment. It's about the upfront hurdle, the down payment. Let's say you're aiming for a modest house. Not extravagant. a $350,000 place, which in many markets is actually conservative. A 10% down payment is $35,000. Now connect the dots. 10 years of that $300 habit equals $36,000. That's not theory, that's the down payment. But most people never see it that way because the money never sits still long enough to look important. Here's what most people don't realize. Money only feels powerful when it's grouped together. Scattered money feels harmless. Grouped money feels intentional, and this is where psychology takes over. Your brain is terrible at understanding slow losses. Behavioral economists call this present bias. We prioritize immediate comfort and massively undervalue future benefit. That's why $300 today feels invisible, but $36,000 later feels impossible. Your brain simply doesn't connect those emotionally. Now let's make this worse, because it actually gets worse. What if that $300 wasn't just sitting in cash? What if it was invested? Let's say you invested $300 a month into a boring index fund earning a very reasonable 7% annual return. After 10 years, that's not $36,000. It's closer to $52,000. That's the down payment. That's closing costs. That's margin for error. That's freedom. And this is the part people hate hearing. Most people don't miss out on home ownership because they don't earn enough. They miss out because their money never compounds. And compounding only works when money is left alone long enough to grow. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Every time you spend money on convenience, you're not just spending dollars. You're spending future options. And the more often you do it, the more your brain learns that money exists to be consumed, not built. That's how habits quietly turn into identity. You stop thinking of yourself as someone building wealth. You start thinking of yourself as someone managing money, managing bills, managing stress, managing cash flow, but never building leverage. Now, you might be thinking, so what? Am I supposed to never enjoy my money? No, that's not the message. The message is that uncontrolled enjoyment feels like freedom in the moment, but it steals freedom from your future. And this is why income alone doesn't fix anything. According to the Federal Reserve, nearly 40% of Americans earning over $100,000 still live paycheck to paycheck. That's not an income problem, that's a behavior problem. And behaviors scale. Raise the income, raise the spending. The $300 habit becomes a $600 habit. The pressure never builds. Here's a metaphor. Imagine trying to inflate a tire with a slow leak. You keep pumping air in. It looks fine for a moment. Then it softens again. Eventually you stop blaming the tire and start blaming yourself. That's what happens with money. People say things like, I'm bad with money. I'll never get ahead. I missed my chance. But the real problem was never effort. It was leakage. Now let's talk about time, because money isn't the only thing you're losing. Every year you delay buying a home, you delay equity, rent goes up, mortgages stabilize, inflation keeps moving. Housing is one of the few areas where locking in costs early actually protects you long term. So when someone says, I'll buy later, what they're really saying is, I'll pay more for the same thing. And again, this isn't blame. This is awareness. Because once you see the pattern, you can interrupt it. Here's what actually changes everything. You stop focusing on restriction and start focusing on visibility. Most budgets fail because they focus on categories. Categories don't change behavior. Friction does. The real question isn't how much did I spend on food, it's how often did I spend without thinking? How many purchases were automatic? How many were emotional? How many were pure convenience? Track your spending for 30 days, not to shame yourself, but to observe patterns. You're not looking for guilt. You're looking for clarity. Then you do the most important thing most people never do. You decide what your money is for before it disappears. If homeownership matters to you, the down payment becomes non-negotiable. It becomes a bill. Automatic transfer, separate account, emotionally specific name, house fund, future home, freedom fund. This sounds small, but it works. Because your brain responds to meaning, not spreadsheets. And here's the psychological shift that surprises people. Once progress becomes visible, saving stops feeling like punishment. It starts feeling powerful. You check the account. You see growth. You feel momentum. Progress is addictive. That's the secret. Spending gives you a hit once. Progress gives you confidence every time you look. And once that loop flips, the $300 habit loses its grip. You don't eliminate it. You control it. You spend intentionally instead of unconsciously. One planned indulgence replaces 10 automatic ones. And suddenly, your money starts doing what it was always supposed to do. Build options. Here's the truth. Buying a house isn't about timing the market. It's not about luck. It's not about secret hacks. It's about whether your daily habits align with the future you say you want. Right now, for most people, they don't. But that's not permanent. That's just invisible behavior becoming visible. And the moment you see the $300 habit clearly, it stops being invisible. Once it's visible, it's optional. And that's how people actually get ahead. Not by making more money, but by finally telling their money where to go, instead of wondering where it went.